All right. I'm just going to get right into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our How to Get Hired webinar on tech. Today, I am joined by Karen Zellers from Amazon, who will be sharing her tips and tricks on getting hired in the tech field. My name is McKenna. I am a student worker for the Career Center, and I'm really excited to be moderating today's event. So without further ado, just a quick overview of today's event. Karen will be giving her presentation and we will follow up with a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, even during her presentation, you can submit them to the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. And yeah, if you see somebody else's comment or question that you really like, you can upvote it. And we'll try to get through all of them as best we can. But yeah, this webinar is currently being recorded and will be posted to YouTube later. And anybody who registered to the event will be sent an email with the YouTube link after the video is posted. So without any other further ado, I'll let Karen take it from here.
Let me share my screen. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Karen Zellers. I'm a sourcing recruiter. And so that means that I look for candidates and especially in tech roles. I currently work at Amazon Web Services. I've been working here for about 1.5 years. And prior to working at Amazon, I actually graduated from UCSC back in 2019. I was in Crown, and I like to think of myself as perpetually undeclared. So what that means is that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after college. I knew, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like, and I thought that it could be cool to work at a tech company. So I ended up majoring in computer science, but I also really liked my on-campus jobs. So I worked as an RA and I worked as a tour guide, and I really loved both of those jobs, both because I felt like I had, such a big impact on the other people that I worked with. And I especially liked the element of being a tour guide and being able to, welcome people into the university. So I say that because I think that it's important to think about, all the different facets of you as a person and not just what your major is. When I was a senior in college, I actually applied to 187 jobs between September of my senior year and probably like March when I accepted my job at Amazon. It was really a mix of technical and non-technical roles. And I wasn't really passionate about probably like over 100 of the jobs that I applied for. I just knew that I needed a job. But when you find a job that you're really excited about, then you want to do a really good job on the application and do a good job in the interview. And that was the case for me with this job at Amazon. So I've been working here for about 1.5 years now. I did want to give a note that all the opinions that I'm going to be sharing are my own opinions. Although I, went to UCSC and now work at Amazon, the advice I'm going to be providing here is my advice from my experience and mainly my experience during the application process. I think it's helpful to, provide some advice from my time as a recruiter too, but I think it's important to keep in mind that I actually don't hire students. There's a lot of different recruiters at Amazon, and there's actually a whole different segment that hires students. And fortunately, I am not able to be one of those recruiters at this point. So definitely keep that in mind when you're asking your questions and listening to the presentations. So today I'm going to be walking through just kind of an overview of what your interview process may look like, starting with, taking some time to brainstorm, looking through different jobs, understanding the job description, making a resume to submit for a job posting, updating your social media, and then also preparing for the interview. And then I'm going to be answering any questions that you have. So if you have any questions come up during the presentation, definitely submit them in the chat, and I'll try to answer, as much as possible. I think it really helps to start with a brainstorm. A lot of folks may feel like, they can skip this step, but I think it's good to really think about what you're really looking for beyond just looking for a job. So think about, things that you like, things that you're good at, the relevant experience you already have, as well as some jobs you may be interested in. I think a good example for this is, say you're majoring in computer science. A lot of people, they're majoring in computer science, so they want to, immediately go into a role in software development. And that's definitely a good path that you can take. But there's a lot of other paths that you could take that use those skills that you've gained within that major. So you could do something like being a solutions architect, which is more of a customer-facing, business type role. You could do tech sales, which is, even more businessy. So really thinking about the things that you like, what you've enjoyed in what you've done in your classes and outside of class, so that you can really make a business case for yourself. Being in an interview and interviewing with a company is like making a business case and trying to, sell your skills and your experience to that company. So you want to think about the things that you like and are good at. And that's why I included this meme, this person saying, I have a lot of interests and I find a lot of different things important. You really want to hone in on what those interests are and, how you'll contribute to the team there. And then once you figure out what you're looking for, and what you're looking for can change over time, you want to look for different positions and different postings. So one place you could look is job boards. You can look at company websites. So every company should have a careers page where they post information about the different jobs and internships they have there. But I would recommend really starting with using your network. So that's things like professors, alumni, clubs, school email lists. I still get the emails from the Baskin School of Engineering email list, and I know they post career and internship information there. You can go to career fairs, and I would also recommend checking out Handshake. And the reason I put a star by using your network is because I would really recommend starting there, because that's something you have access to that not everyone else does. So when you're applying to a job, say you go on LinkedIn and you submit your resume, you're competing with anyone else who submitted their resume there. So you're competing with, folks other recent graduates from other colleges. You're competing with people who don't have college degrees. You're competing with mid-career professionals. You're competing with people who, did boot camps or things like that. But if you use your network, for example, you go on Handshake, those are places that are specifically looking for UCSC students. And I think that's a big advantage is, utilizing the resources that you have right now.
Hey, Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think your slides are updating for us as you progress through them. I'm sorry.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it just jumped forward. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, this slide isn't super detailed, but essentially just, going through your network, I think is really helpful. And can you see the next slide too?
Yeah, now it's good. Sorry about that, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I can send out the slides too, if that would be helpful. I think my presentation mode is having some problems. But the next slide is actually really helpful to look at. This is a sample job description. I just pulled this one off the internet. And I wanted to walk through kind of some of the different components and how to read one of these job descriptions, because this is not something that I knew how to do when I was in college. When I was in college, I would look at the title and I would say, that sounds like a great job, briefly go through the qualifications, but it's really hard to know what they're really looking for. So with any job description, there's two different sections. The first one is basic qualifications. So those are minimum required qualifications to be considered. And the reason we have these minimum qualifications is really for compliance purposes. So say there are two candidates who are both going for like a mid-level career position. One of them has 5 years of experience in that type of position, and the other one has 1 year of experience in that type of position, but they know some of the members of the company. Maybe they're really great at schmoozing, something like that. The basic qualifications are there for compliance purposes so that you can set a minimum of the years of experience and the type of experience you're looking for. So it's really helpful as a recruiter because I know that I can't consider anyone unless they meet all of those requirements. So for this job, it says, for example, they need to have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree with 7 years of experience. So I know right off the bat that if someone doesn't have 7 years of experience on top of a bachelor's degree, I can't consider them for the role, no matter how good their experience is in other things. And I know it seems, kind of rigid, but that's why we have these preferred qualifications too. So basic or required. If you don't meet most of the basic qualifications on the role, I definitely recommend, looking at maybe some other job types, because the jobs you may be looking at may be more mid-level career. But we also have preferred qualifications. So if you don't meet those, that's totally fine. These are kind of bonuses. So for example, if you see that a lot of the jobs have, AWS or RESTful APIs as a preferred qualification, then you can really try to add some of those things to your resume, maybe do like a Coursera class in that topic or something like that, but it's not required. So if you don't have it, it doesn't mean we can't consider you. And then the other thing to keep in mind is definitely be looking for jobs that have, new grad, recent grad, 2021 intern or something like that in the title. I think that'll be a better chance of finding basic qualifications that don't look, quite so intense. And then once you know kind of what jobs you're looking for, it's really helpful to spend some good time and look at making a really great resume. My best advice for making a good resume is you want to have your resume reflect the type of job you're applying to. I don't think that means that you have to make a resume for every single job description that you apply for. So for example, me applying to 180 jobs, that you don't want to make a new resume for every single job that you're applying for. But if you're applying to, say, a recruiter job and a software development job and a sales job, you want to try to align the experience that you put with the experience that you put from, your experience in college or your projects that you've worked on or things like that. You want it to align with the type of job that you're looking for. Because a recruiter is going to look at, your resume, and if you don't know what you're applying for, the recruiter is not going to be able to see that. So I definitely recommend looking at the job description, thinking about, how to represent your experience in regards to the type of job you're applying for. I also recommend using metrics. So for example, I was an RA, and I think it's a lot more meaningful for me to say, I managed a building of 80 students in a community of 600 students, because that shows a lot of impact versus if I were to say, I managed students, I wrote incident reports, etc. So definitely makes a difference the type of metrics you use. I'd also recommend getting it reviewed before submitting. You could take it to the Career Center, show it to friends. Definitely recommend looking up some examples online of sample resumes. I had a career day that I worked on a couple months ago, and someone asked me to review their resume, and it didn't have any of their titles on it of the jobs that they did. And it had their GPA from like 20 years ago, and their GPA was like a 2.7. So these are the things that you may not think about when you're making your resume, but you definitely notice in someone else's resume. And part of that is why actually I put together this resume that I found online. You may not be able to see it okay, but you can, I'll send over the PDF of the presentation later. So I wanted to take a look at just a sample resume I found online and dig into the things that I noticed and that I found to be particularly interesting. So apologies again if you can't see it. I know it's pretty small, so I'll send this over after the presentation. But I highlighted the 5 different things that I noticed on this resume. The first one is that this candidate was selected as the top performing intern in their class. So it looks like they did an internship and they were selected as the top intern. I thought that was really impressive. Definitely shows that, they're doing a good job in what they're doing. I would have liked to know how big their class of interns was. Like, was it 10 people? Was it 50 people? Because that would have given me an idea of, how impressive that was. The second thing I noticed is that they made a project. Their project is a social media scheduler, and they released it, and it has over 500 monthly active users. So that shows a really big impact to me because, they made something and a lot of people were able to use it. The third thing that I noticed is that they're a co-founder of a computer science club that's over 35 members. So it shows, leadership. It shows they're really interested in computer science outside of the classroom. And 35 members is a pretty big club. So I thought that was impressive too. The fourth thing that I noticed is their skills. Recruiters often are told by whoever has an open role on their team and whoever's hiring, I really want to see someone with HTML and CSS, or I really want to see someone with, X, Y, and Z skills. Recruiters don't usually know, what that really means, but they recognize those keywords. So if you can show those keywords on your resume, the other thing is that your resume will go into a database at the end or once you submit it. So recruiters can use search terms to search the database. So if a recruiter is searching for like Angular or JavaScript, then it may come up when they're searching that. So definitely use keywords on your resume. And then the last thing that I noticed is their honors. I think if you have any like Dean's Honors List or any honors that you've had in school, that's a great thing to highlight on your resume because it shows that you're doing a good job in your job, which is being a student. So definitely recommend highlighting those. The last thing that I always look for is if a candidate has a LinkedIn. And there's two reasons for this. One reason is because it's the most updated information of someone's job experience. So often, someone will submit a resume and I'll see it way after they submit the resume. And so I want to check their LinkedIn and just see if they've done anything else recently, anything else in addition. If I'm interested in their background, I want to learn more and make sure that they're a good fit before I spend or schedule 30 minutes to talk with them. The other reason I want to see if they have a LinkedIn is because it could add additional information in terms of their skills. So say, for example, I'm recruiting for a software development position and I want an additional skill or I need an additional skill that's not on their resume. If I see it on their LinkedIn, then I could feel comfortable reaching out when I may not have reached out if I didn't see it on their resume. So I think having a LinkedIn is very, very important and something you should definitely do during your job search. Here's some more reasons why having social media is important. And when I say social media, I'm really referring to LinkedIn. 79% of job applicants use social media in their job search. 70% of hiring managers say they've hired with social media. 73% of millennials found their last position through social media. And 71% of recruiters said social media recruiting was effective. I am a recruiter who uses social media a lot. I probably hired 80% of the people that I hired last year because I found them on LinkedIn. They weren't actively looking for jobs and I was able to reach out. But I think it's also a good place to actively look for jobs, make connections and things like that. Lastly, I wanted to provide a couple of tips on the interview process. I think this process really needs its own presentation, especially if you're trying to interview for a more technical role. I think that, that is kind of its own presentation. But here are some of the tips that were really helpful to me when I was going through my interviews. Every company does have its own process. So definitely ask. You usually speak to a recruiter during the process. Ask any clarifying questions about, what the process looks like, what the expectations are, how you can prepare, if they have any resources for you to prepare. They're not going to judge you for asking those type of questions, and they'll probably be happy to provide that information. I also recommend doing some research beforehand. You should know what the company does and why you want to work there before you have an interview with, the hiring manager or the team. And part of the reason for that is just for yourself. Like, why would you interview with a place if you don't know why you want to work there? So definitely recommend going on their website, going on YouTube, seeing if you can learn anything about the company, And then during that research, you want to write down 3 questions that you can ask the interviewer. I think the most important thing that you can show as a student or as a recent graduate is that you're curious and you want to learn, because nobody knows everything, especially as a student or a recent graduate. And you're going to learn a lot, especially in your first year in the industry. So you want to really come up with some questions to show you're really interested and curious. My second tip is you want to dress the part. So wear something that makes you feel professional, even if it's just a phone interview and you don't have to go on camera. Something comfortable that makes you feel like you're in the role and you're professional. And also have water, pen and paper, notes accessible. I think just whatever to make you feel comfortable, and definitely utilize pen and paper so that you can write down anything that you have questions about. And then my last tip is release endorphins. I think this is just a good tip for life in general, but I think it's helpful to get an exercise routine. Anytime I had an interview during my senior year, like 5 minutes before the interview, I would put on some inspirational music and start doing some jumping jacks. It totally gets rid of all of your nerves, and I think it's a really great way to prepare and then show that you're energized going into the interview. And then lastly, do not be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot of resources that are there for you, and anyone who has a job right now has gone through this process. And it's not easy, especially right now. So really utilize your resources like the Career Center, professors, clubs, peers. Definitely utilize, CAPS if that's applicable and relevant to you. And then lastly, I would definitely recommend the Career Advice Network. I wasn't really aware of it when I was a student, but there's really a lot of alumni on there who are really excited about doing coaching, mock interviews, career advice with UCSC students. I myself am on there, and I've only done like 1 consultation. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions after the presentation. I think it's a really great resource. And, those are folks who are actually in the industry and can answer any questions that you have before you spend that time interviewing for roles that you don't really know a lot about. And then lastly, I just wanted to answer any questions that you have. Anything about the presentation or anything else about like the application and interview process, I'm happy to help.
Okay, yeah, we already have a couple of questions in the Q&A, but again, to any of the viewers who want to ask questions of Karen, you can submit it to the Q&A box. But we can just dive right into it. Our first question is from Joshua. If we don't have any relevant work experience or internships under our belt, how should we craft our resume such that this deficiency isn't detrimental?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of other things that you can add. One you could add is classes. So, if you're, say, interviewing for a computer science job, just add any technical classes that you've taken. Another big thing that people do is projects. So regardless of the role that you're in, finding a way that you can do a project on your own. So for a technical role, that may be like a coding project, or for a non-technical role, it could be, making some sort of project online or something that you could do with friends. I know it's a little bit different right now with kind of everything online, but if you have any sort of project experience, I would highlight that in the place where a job or internship experience might go. So really highlighting, that classes you've taken, skills that you've learned. So, if it's coding languages or if it's, speaking languages, whatever is relevant to the type of job. And again, reading the job description to see specifically what they're looking for.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, what if you meet a high majority of preferred qualifications, but there are 1 to 2 missing basic qualifications?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what the basic qualifications are. I'm not saying that you shouldn't apply to a job if you don't meet all of the basic qualifications. I think if you meet most of the basic qualifications, you should definitely apply. But I would say if the basic qualifications are, all looking for like 6+ years of experience. That's really the type of job that they're looking for someone, mid-career. So I would focus on the roles where you meet most or all the basic qualifications, but don't, knock yourself out of the running because you don't meet all of them.
Okay, thank you again. Our next question comes from Kyle, who asks, can you offer an example of what an effective cold email to you on LinkedIn reads like? In general, if a prospective engineer reaches out to a tech recruiter.
Sorry, I think it just cut out.
I'm sorry, I can repeat that. Can you offer an example of what an effective cold email to you on LinkedIn reads like? In general, if a prospective engineer reaches out to a tech recruiter.
Yes. So I get a lot of cold emails. I almost considered putting some in this presentation, but then I didn't want to for their privacy. I would say I have hired people who have emailed me on LinkedIn. You just need to do your research ahead of time. So one example of an email that I got that I didn't respond to might be something like, hey, Karen, I applied to this role. Can we talk about it? Thanks, bye. And it happens to be a role that, is not a role that I work on. Or it happens to be, an email that, they're just saying, hey, versus, writing an email itself. So what I would say is try to do a really good job to figure out that this person is actually a person who may be relevant for the role that you're applying to. So to give you an example, I actually hire for sales roles, but people will reach out to me for software development roles. So I don't usually answer those type of questions just because I can't help them and I don't know anyone who recruits for those roles. So I would say if you, do your research, look at their profile and see what roles they're looking for, and then craft a really good email. So use some detail from their profile, like say, hey, Karen, I saw that you went to UCSC. I myself am a fellow banana slug, and I'm really interested in working at Amazon. This is the role that I applied to. I'd love, if you could make an introduction or speak to me about it. So my 2 pointers there are do your research, make sure it's someone who actually works on that role or a similar role, and then actually look at their profile. Don't send the same message to everyone because you won't get a lot of responses that way.
Okay. Our next question is, what are some keywords that are beneficial to include in a resume? Also, are there any words to avoid?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for words to avoid, I would avoid using like fluffy words that kind of go around what you actually did. So for example, if I was talking about my experience as an RA, you really want to put in those metrics and say, that's managed a building of this many in a community of this many versus, trying to say, just kind of not providing a lot of detail. So I can't think of any specific words right off the bat, but, just kind of those words that say, that give the impression of like, I did a really great thing without having the data to back it up. And then for keywords, I think it depends on what you're interviewing for. But if you see keywords in a job description, like if you see coding languages like Java, C, Python, put those in your resume. Or if you see, skills they're looking for or classes that they're looking for, things like that. Just kind of whatever keywords you see in the job description, that'll provide more detail into your background.
Perfect. Okay. Our next question is from Jeffrey, who asks, in your experience, does having a graduate degree, i.e. a master's, usually translate to better opportunities, and is it worth getting one?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it also depends on what you're looking to do after college. So I hire salespeople, and some salespeople don't have college degrees at all. I've hired people who don't have college degrees at all. And then some people have bachelor's degrees, and some people have MBAs, and some people have master's degrees. But for me, at the recruiter stage, and in like as far as getting an initial call with a recruiter, I just want to see if they meet those basic qualifications. So, looking at the job description, if someone meets those qualifications, like if someone, has the relevant years of sales experience in the experience that I'm looking for, then I don't really care if they have a bachelor or master's degree. That being said, it may be something that comes into question more in the interview process if you're able to really talk about, what you learned from doing your MBA or your master's degree. It's never a bad thing that, you took on that extra challenge. But I consider people with all different backgrounds, even people without college degrees. So it's not required.
Okay. Our next question comes from Jeremy. Should I be looking for internships as a freshman?
Yeah. I think it's really helpful as a freshman to just kind of make almost like a 4-year plan of what you're looking to do, similar to the kind of the 4-year plan you make with classes. And I think internships can be under a lot of different names, but I think your goal should be to do something with your summer or do something with any period when you're on school. So if that's taking classes at UCSC or taking classes at community college, or something, tutoring over the summer, I think any experience that you get is good. And I'll also say that outside of internships, I didn't do any internships specifically, but I would say that the most helpful experience that I had was my on-campus jobs, because those were references I was able to have. I was able to do like leadership within those positions. And during my interview, that's exclusively what I talked about was my experience in those positions. So I would say, try to get some work experience in some form or another, but also make a plan for yourself about what you want to do, at the end of 4 years and how you want to kind of incrementally get there from now to then.
Okay, awesome. And before we move on to the next question, I also just kind of want to plug really quick the Chancellor's Undergraduate Internship Program, which is a great program that I participated in last year. And it provides a scholarship that goes towards your tuition. And it has a wide number of positions that are open through organizations across campus. So, for example, there's like a game design internship. There's different internships that are specific to different organizations on campus, and I know that there's multiple tech positions there as well. And the application closes, I think, in just under 2 weeks. So if you're interested in that for next year, definitely look at it. But moving on to our next question, I'm thinking of doing an internship in the coming summer. I will probably be applying for a software engineer position and am currently a second-year CS major. What skills would I need to get an internship like that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the company and just what they're looking for. So every company will have their own job posting, and every company is looking for something different. So no two companies may be looking for exactly the same thing. But I think it's usually a mix of, for that type of job, your technical skills, as well as your ability to, be professional in that kind of environment. I think that's something a lot of people often forget is it's not just the skills you learn in the classroom, but also your ability to contribute to a team and things like that. So mix of both experiences.
Awesome. All right, our next question comes from Charlie, who asks, what does a background check for applicants involve? What are red flags for tech recruiters?
That's a good question. So I'm actually not involved in the background check stage. That's something, at least within my organization, that's something that would happen after the person accepts an offer with us. So if they accept an offer, then we would do a background check. So it's not something you have to worry about during the interview process. But I think it's mainly just checking your criminal history and if you have any felonies or things like that.
Okay, awesome. Our next question is, hi, and thanks for this presentation. What is the deadline for new grad? How long until someone does not qualify for Amazon's new grad?
Yeah, that's a good question. For Amazon specifically, I don't know. I think in general, companies will be okay with at least considering someone if they graduated in the last year. Um, they may be more flexible this year with everything, and I know it's a little bit more difficult right now with the pandemic. But I would say if you graduated in the last 9 to 12 months, I would still be applying under new grad roles just because they're looking for recent graduates, and I would count you as a recent graduate in the last year.
Okay, awesome. All right, our next question comes from Vincent, who says, "Hi, Karen. What types of opportunities should I try to prioritize to make myself stand out? Maybe at UCSC or around the Bay Area that you know of."
Yeah, I would say anything that you're passionate about. So if you follow, a different path that you're not interested in, you're not going to necessarily do as well in something than something that you would be really passionate about. So I think the thing that the companies want to see, even more than that you're doing something, is that you're involved in, leadership in the thing you're doing, that you did a really great job in the thing that you were doing. So it doesn't matter what you do. Like you could be leading a Girl Scout troop, or you could be, leading a hackathon, but they want to see the scale of what you did, the impact, why it was important to you. And if it's relevant to the position, I think that's a bonus.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is, so you say that we don't have to build a resume for each job, but rather have a resume that represents our experience. Additionally, there is the suggesting of tailoring your resume. What is the most efficient method of tailoring?
Yes. So what I say is build your resume based on experience, but then build it based on the type of role that you're applying to. So if I was applying to like a role in HR, I'd want it to look really different than a role in tech. So I would say if you're applying to, depending on the role you're applying to, think about how you want to include the classes that you've taken, any experience outside of the classroom that you've done. Like for example, if you are volunteering and you don't think that's necessarily a good fit for your tech resume, but you think it could really show your social skills for your other resume. I think it really depends on the experience you have already, but in general, kind of trying to highlight the skills that you have that would be relevant for that specific position. And that could be all the way down to the classes that you've taken, since most of us have taken a wide range of classes, focusing on those types of classes that fit well with that type of position.
Awesome. Okay. Our next question is, what part of the year during college is best to dedicate focused time towards job applications?
Yeah, I would say it does somewhat depend on when you're looking for a job. But I would say if you're looking for, a job or an internship, you probably want to start looking probably like 6 to 9 months before you would start. So when I was looking for my job my senior year, I actually started probably in like September of my senior year, and it took from September to March to find something. So I recommend, probably trying to start 6 to 9 months before you're looking to start the job.
Okay. All right. Our next question is, if I were to omit a relevant experience, would it look like I had an employment gap?
If you were to omit a relevant experience, I think at this point in your life, if you're, a student or a recent grad, they're not going to be very concerned with employment gaps. I think it's something that's more concerning, if you're mid-career. But I think you could either, leave it out, or you could put something in lieu of that, like say, a lot of things, something that mid-career professionals will say is like they went on sabbatical or something like that. It's all about telling your story and how you got to the point where you are today. So whatever you feel would look the best, whether that's saying like, I was traveling or something like that. But if it's just because you're a student and you're studying, I don't think you have to worry about it.
All right. Our next question asks, how important is a portfolio site?
Yeah, I'm assuming this is for more technical roles. I would say if you have one, it's helpful. I think in terms of just having a place to put all of your work that you've done, I think that could be tremendously helpful. I don't hire for particularly technical roles, so I'm not really sure, how recruiters look at that. But I would say that, anything you can do to put yourself ahead, whether that's, sharing your GitHub or making a site, anything to make you stand out could be helpful.
All right. Our next question is it effective to email university recruiters if they list their email on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it wouldn't hurt. If they list their email on LinkedIn, then they clearly are okay with getting emails. And then kind of as a side note to that, anytime you're emailing someone, I would put, extra thought into the email that you're sending them. I get a lot of emails that people send in bulk. So they'll send to like 50 recruiters and I never respond. So if you are sending an email to someone and they work at, a specific company, look up the company and include in your email why you're interested in working there, and then attach like your resume and other information. So that could be a good way to reach out to them.
All right. Our next question is, what's the best way to obtain the contact information of recruiters in my field?
Yes. So there's a couple different ways. One is that you could apply directly to the job. I think that's always a good way to start. I think another way you could try to obtain recruiter contact information is going on LinkedIn. It does require a little bit more effort to try to figure out which recruiters are hiring, for roles that you may be interested in and roles that you may be a fit for. But you could message them on LinkedIn. Recruiters aren't always great at responding though. So like I said, if you're going to go that route, you have to put in a lot of effort into making a really personalized email to them.
Okay, I think this question we touched a bit on before. Someone asked, will new grads be accepted for internships?
Yeah, I would say you should apply unless it says don't apply. I would say don't put yourself out of the running if you could be a good fit, and I would count yourself as a new grad up to a year after graduation.
Okay, all right. Our next question comes from Ali, who asks, is there anything we should be doing differently if we are applying for full-time roles out of the state?
Yes, out of the state versus in the state. I would say for the most part, you should be doing the same thing. One thing you can do is on your LinkedIn, you can actually put that you're open to opportunities within that other location as well. So there's a button on LinkedIn where you can say locations where you're interested in. So you could add that as a location. I don't know if it would make a huge difference, but it's worth a shot.
Awesome. All right. Our next question comes from Aria, who asks, how would the recruiters react to a resume where they don't find, oh, sorry. How would the recruiters react to a resume where they don't find previously done internships, but know that the person has skills required for a job?
Yes. I think, if they know that you have the skills required for the job and you're able to show that on your resume, then I think at least some recruiters would react positively to that. And then I would say they want to see that you've done something. So I think internship is kind of a specific type of job that people do. If you turn in a resume and it just says like skill, they want to see that you've done something, whether that's do well in your classes or whether it's do just a random job that's not relevant. So I think it's a combination of having experience doing anything and then having those skills.
Awesome. Well, that does it for the, oh, never mind. We still have more questions. Again, if you guys have any questions, you can submit them to the Q&A box or in the chat. So our next question comes from Chris, who asks, I received a message from a recruiter on Handshake with a link to apply to the job. Do I need to respond to the recruiter? And if so, what do I say?
Yeah. So you don't have to if you're not interested in the job, but if you are interested in the job, then I definitely recommend applying or filling out the application. Usually, I think on Handshake they'll send out like a mass email to a lot of different students, so they won't be offended if you don't respond. But I think if you're interested, you should definitely respond and fill it out.
Awesome. All right. Well, our next question comes from Kyle, who asks, what are examples of strong teach me about yourself when a recruiter asks? I'm assuming
like, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's like your elevator pitch. I like to say that, doing an interview is like preparing a business case for yourself. It's also telling your story. So being able to say, my name is so-and-so. I'm studying this at UC Santa Cruz. I'm a senior, and this is what I've been doing up until now. I think is a good place to start. And then highlight some of the things that you've done that are relevant. So whether it's like, you led a project or you were involved in a club on campus or something like that. And I would definitely include why you're interested in that role / company. So saying, I really like problem solving and I really like this class and this class that I took. And I'm really interested in going into data science in the future. So that's why I wanted to apply to this role. So it's telling a story about the different things that you did and highlighting the ones that you feel show your experience the best.
Okay. So if I'm correct, I don't think we have any more. Oh, I am incorrect. We have another question. How's undergrad research from a recruiter's point of view? Is it not as important?
Yeah, I think any experience that you have is really based on are you doing anything within the organization, whether it's the school or the company, and I think that any experience is good experience as long as you can highlight the impact of what you did. So highlighting the impact of the research that you had, and then highlighting the skills that you have. For me, I think that any experience that you do is good.
All right. We have another question from Yusu, who asks, I saw a basic qualification of internship includes pursuing MS/BS. Is that meaning that I need to pursue MS/BS during the internship or application? Can a graduated student be considered for this position?
That's a good question. And it definitely doesn't sound clear from their job description. A lot of times they'll say like, must be pursuing or must graduate by this certain year. I would say if it's not clear, I would go ahead and apply, and the worst thing that they could do is say no.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have another question. What are common coding questions that can be asked during an interview?
That's a good question. I only hire salespeople, so I don't ask them any coding questions. But definitely look online. I'm sure there's a lot of resources either on like LeetCode or just on the internet in general about the type of questions that companies ask.
Awesome. Well, those are the questions that we have so far in the Q&A box, but every time I have said that we've run out of questions, more popped up. So I'm gonna hold off on saying that to give the opportunity for more people to ask. But I have had a couple of questions about our if this video is being recorded and if it's going to be posted anywhere. And yes, this video is this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the Career Success YouTube channel. If you have already, if you registered for this event, you will automatically be sent an email once the video is posted with a link, and we will include Karen's slides that we were missing at the beginning of the presentation so that you all can go through her whole presentation live, go back and forth between the video and the slides. But I think if we are done with questions, we can wrap this up. I really quick just wanted to say a couple of things. Obviously, thank you, Karen, and not meaning to share that, sorry. All right, this is the right thing I'm trying to share. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Once you exit out of this webinar, you will be prompted to fill out a survey. If you can do that, that would be great. It helps us make these events awesome for students like you and really helps us improve these events. And then also a couple of upcoming virtual events. Today and tomorrow is the Communities of Color Career Series. It will be various career workshops that take place at 4 p.m. So definitely make it if you can. Also next week, we have authentic stories from slugs in tech. There are going to be at least 2 iterations that I know of for that, I believe. So definitely make that if you can. And of course, next week we have our computer engineering career and internship program. So if you are inspired to apply or you just want to learn more about the companies that are going to be showing up, definitely attend if you can. And you can find more about these events as well as more events that we'll be having in the future, either on the UCSC Career Success Team's website or on Handshake. And yeah, just thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Karen, for helping us. I guess before we wrap up, we'll have one last question from Ryan, who asks, would a personal website with projects / other experience we have in the field be relevant in our job search, or would recruiters not go that deep in order to find our site linked on our LinkedIn / application?
Yeah, I think that it wouldn't hurt if you have projects putting them, online or on GitHub. I would say that, the biggest thing is being able to highlight those projects on your resume. So if you have like a project section or something like that, I think that's probably what the recruiter would mainly be looking at. But, it's not just about having the recruiter look at your resume. It's also about making it through that interview process. So any, projects that you've worked on that you're able to publish and put online, that's something that'll impress the team interviewing too. So I think it definitely wouldn't hurt.
Okay, awesome. All right, so with that being said, thank you to Karen, obviously, for presenting today. That was extremely helpful. And yeah, I hope all of you guys have a great afternoon and rest of your winter quarter. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great one.